One of the best benefits of virtual reality is that, for educational purposes, but just in general, is that VR can take you to somewhere that you could never go before, that you could never go in your entire life. So you can be an astronaut floating out of space, or you can be transported back to Roman times and be in the middle of a Roman garrison and understand what it was like to be in the middle of that army. VR has this transportive capability that cannot be matched by anything else. The sheer kind of understanding that you get from being placed in those environments will never be replicated on in 2D media, so through film or presentation or anything like that. So that has huge kind of applications around education. Not only is your head trapped in a headset, so you can't look away, and if you're looking away, you're definitely going to be looking at something else that's equally relevant because you're in the environment. It's attention grabbing, so you can direct people's focus quite well by use of different technologies to draw focus around different through a story. For example, it's not education related, but Google Spotlight Stories, their piece called Rain or Shine, uses kind of focus techniques like rendering to draw your attention back to the story if you do look away. But alternatively, when you do look away, you see other bits of the story that aren't relevant to the actual main narrative. Does that make sense? So it's kind of, you can do more with the world around you than just listening to someone talk. And then one piece of content that's really kind of transforming how people talk about VR at the moment is a piece called Hold the World. And this is David Attenborough, so from the BBC, who's been volumetrically captured, and he sits in front of you in VR at a desk in the Natural History Museum, and he talks you through different artefacts in the Natural History Museum. So, for example, the blue whale skeleton, which is quite famous in the Natural History Museum, that's been scanned, and you can you quite literally hold this skeleton in front of you, and you can scale it, and you can turn it round, and you can see all the different aspects. You're never going to be able to do that in real life. You're never going to be up close and personal with a blue whale skeleton unless you actually work at the Natural History Museum, and that is not the majority of the population. So that real kind of being able to get up close and personal with things that you'd never be able to get up close and personal with is a huge application of virtual reality. And so going through that piece of content, Attenborough will talk to you about the different kind of aspects of the skeleton, and then the kind of finale of that piece is the skeleton grows to full scale and then swims around you. So again, being next to a blue whale, you're never going to be able to get that, and that is captivating, and certainly something that you will never truly appreciate if you're just watching it on a 2D screen. So kind of going away from that side of education, the kind of attention grabbing and that sort of thing, we're seeing a lot of training applications becoming more and more kind of into the mainstream. So larger corporates and stuff are implementing VR training into their kind of workflow. So something we have seen a lot of is kind of situational and again, taking you back to this, putting you somewhere you could never be before, is putting people in a dangerous environment in a safe way. So one of the applications I've tried is a piece called Animersion, and it is a firefighting simulator. And the idea is that the consequences of your actions in the simulation will stick with you, so it becomes a true learning experience. So you suit up, and if you don't put the suit on correctly, you will have issues throughout the experience. If you don't duck under the burning door properly, your visor will fog up. If you use the wrong CO2 canister, or the fire will come and envelope you and go over your head, that sort of thing. So that's memorable. You're gonna remember being encased in flames, obviously not feeling it, but then add haptic technology, which is evolving, and then you are starting to feel it, and that becomes a way more memorable experience. There's a group called Luminous Group in the Northeast, and they focus on kind of training and this sort of content. And they've seen retention rates, I think, go up by about 30% in that when they've done training research using VR for these sort of things. Do you mind if I talk about AR as well, or?
No.
Oh, just VR.
Just VR.
Just VR.
Yeah.
So that's. Sorry, I just had to kind of point about it.
No,
No, it's fine. So yeah, it kind of this have retention rate and how like like you remember these experiences, because walking through a burning building is something you're going to remember. So it really kind of has that kind of attention grabbing kind of. Sorry, I keep losing my train of thought. So scale. And another benefit of VR training is being able to have a multi-user experience. So being able to have people from all over the world in the same space training on a piece of content. So you save time, you save money, rather than having to fly people from country to country to deliver training. You could all sign into the same room and be delivered a piece of training virtually. So one example of this is a company called Immerse, based over in Farringdon. And they've got this multi-user experience where a trainer will sign in and they will talk you through building a satellite in the middle of the desert, because for their clients that is a very realistic scenario that they will be in. And the trainer can be there and talk to you, and it's very intuitive, and you actually have to do every single part correctly, otherwise it doesn't work. So you have to get under the satellite and twist all the bolts tight and make sure everything's screwed together properly, and then like actually press the control panel correctly, and so on and so forth to make it work. And it becomes a very cooperative experience, and your mind kind of forgets the fact that you're not there in real life, and that you're looking at avatars of people, which is basically just a floating head and floating hands. So it kind of you kind of get lost in this scenario. And I don't build satellites, but I feel like I remember, I've done that several times, but I remember the experience quite well, like because you are so focused on this task at hand, because you have no distractions. Someone might like try to tap you in the real world, but your focus and what you can see is all based on the scenario at hand. And I've seen a similar situation in the classroom. So going back to traditional education, so in high school and primary school, we've seen a piece called Class VR, which is quite a rudimentary set of headsets, but they all kind of run from one computer, and it means that a teacher can stand in front of a class, ask them all to put on their headsets, and simultaneously beam out the right content to each of the students. And these headsets in particular had both VR and AR functions, so you could do really interesting things with kind of the merging of the technologies, and it really kind of gets children engaged, especially. I've seen kids just kind of lose themselves in VR and really just kind of forget about the real world and forget about what they like friends around them or whatever, and just kind of really get focused on what is being put at hand. This, like, to keep coming back to it, this kind of not having the distraction, not having like things around you to take your focus is a real kind of benefit of it. So between that and taking you to places you will never go, and helping you understand things and see things you will never be able to see realistically, I think they're the two kind of main applications of VR. So the impacts of VR in film and even TV. So we are seeing more and more actual like cinematic pieces coming out in VR, and episodic pieces as well. And one of the great things about VR is because you are immersed in the story, you can do really interesting things with where the person is placed and how that affects their perspective. So you can see things that are played out kind of in front of you as you're just like a spectator, like a camera would be in a traditional film, or if you actually can kind of almost embody another character where the characters speak to you and you become part of the story. It's not just someone talking to a camera anymore, it's someone addressing the audience member. And not in a breaking the fourth wall sort of way, is that they're acknowledging your presence within the scene. And then we're seeing some filmmakers doing some quite interesting things with this. So there's a piece called Mayubi, which is a short film, and it's available on mobile devices, so mobile VR. It's nothing too technically kind of huge, but you embody a child's robot that this kid gets for Christmas or his birthday or something, and the child will play with you in the play with the robot, which you are seeing through the eyes of. And there are wonderful moments where if you turn your head, you see the robot in the mirror and it mirrors the action that you're doing. So if you turn your head, the robot turns its head as well. So kind of really starting to play with how you embody the different characters, and putting you in the centre of the action. And there is a point where I think the parents are arguing in a different room, and if you focus on the child, you don't really hear that, and you become kind of more involved in the playtime, whatever's happening with the kid. Or if you if you move your head towards the kitchen, you hear that argument, you hear what's going on behind the scenes. So really, that's something you would not be able to do in traditional film and TV, being kind of able to let the audience shift their perspective, let them see things that not everyone will see, because what they choose to hear is what they experience. As I said before, you can kind of guide people's focus, but actually being able to let them see their own thing is equally as important, for each person to have their own kind of individual experience of a piece. So that's kind of something that we're seeing quite a lot of, and also being able to do things with graphics and the actual kind of the visual presentation that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get away with in traditional media. So there's a piece called Dispatch, which is a really excellent piece across Oculus devices, and you are in the kind of the mind of a first responder, so a 999 responder, and the graphics are kind of this geometric kind of line drawing style, but it kind of draws in front of you as he and you are hearing the calls of the 999 calls. So that obviously takes you into quite harrowing things. So there's a piece where there's a lady trapped in the bathroom who's a victim of domestic abuse, but the world that she's describing on the call is being drawn around you, so his imagination kind of fuels the visual representation of the piece. So you can really kind of do really interesting things with the content that you just wouldn't be able to do with traditional media. But on the flip side, so that's kind of how users experience it. You can also start looking at how people can start to use VR to create film and television. So the blockbuster that came out this year, Ready Player One, by Steven Spielberg, he actually used VR to create a lot of those scenes. So what they were able to do is, using a real-time game engine to create the environments that the CG characters would be animated in, Spielberg could put on a headset and then look around the scene and say, okay, I want my camera there and I want to shoot the action from this perspective. So actually natively creating things in 3D lends itself to even better 2D film. So does that make sense? Actually using it not as a way of just watching something, engaging with content, but actually using it to make that content as well. And I think that's going to be the real transformation of what VR brings to industry as a whole, is even if you are creating for traditional media, utilising kind of real-time engines and game engines and that sort of thing, and CG, to actually create these immersive, experiences that are not your traditional animation. So being able to put a camera in one part of the room, you would have to redraw, you could just do it quite easily in VR, but you'd have to redraw completely if you were doing through animation. Does that make sense? So this kind of like, it makes it more streamlined. And we talk about this quite a lot, is that we are not 2D thinkers. So drawing a 3D image on a piece of paper doesn't always make sense in people's brains. But if you can actually start drawing in 3D, you start kind of going, okay, well that actually looks like a tin can because there's an actual circle to it, and the straight, like, it's not just straight lines, it's an actual more, it's a cylinder. So you start to think about it in different ways, and I think people engage with it quite easily because we see the world 3D anyway. And then, so what should I do? Do you want to do?
What's number 2?
Number 2, that was impact of film and TV.
You can do the last one, future
virtuality.
Yeah.
So I think virtuality will kind of impact not necessarily society, but like the consumer market in 2 different ways in the coming years. We will see more consumer-based at-home VR, hopefully becoming more and more widespread. With the Oculus Quest coming out in a couple of months, which is Oculus's first 6 degrees of freedom headset that's completely untethered. So this takes the whole price point away of having to buy the stupidly expensive PC, having to buy the stupidly expensive headset, and then purchase the content on top of it. This is a £400 headset that's straight out of the box, and you can play it, you don't need anything else. So that's going to like break that market, hopefully. That's a lot of like VR makers are seeing this kind of as the bubble popping that is going to get people interested. But on the flip side is location-based entertainment. So actually, for example, it was the Star Wars The Void at Todd Westfield in London. That was a Star Wars experience with, I think, up to 6 players at a time, and you all embodied the same space, and you were all stormtroopers, but everything was like, there was haptic feedback, and it was a multiplayer experience. So when I looked at my friend spoke back to me, but they were dressed as a stormtrooper in VR. So this kind of location-based experiences, that's really no different to kind of arcades and stuff like that from yesteryear, but it's kind of just been given a more of a technological upgrade. And also we're seeing quite a lot of kind of theatre that's starting to use VR as well, and how we can kind of play on the conventions of theatre using kind of different audience perspective and stuff like that. So similar to what we were talking about with using it for film, actually using it for live audiences. And one of the companies that we're working with at the moment is creating a piece called Traitor, and that's a 2-person experience where one person's in the headset and the person who's out of the headset controls what they see. So that becomes very cooperative, and you have to work together to solve this thriller, and it's a really like experimental piece of work. And another piece that we're seeing is a piece called Fatherland, and they're working with a full audience, so a traditional theatre audience, with someone in a headset. Well, they get different people from the audience in and out of the headset, and there's one actor on stage who embodies, using motion tracking, various different characters. So this is a real like multi-layered experience with someone in the headset, audience participation, you've got someone doing live animation with motion tracking, and it becomes this kind of 75 minutes of just kind of meta technology kind of working together to create a really like cool experience. So I really think that's kind of where a lot of the technology is going, how VR's going to expand, and it's going to become more and more mainstream. And with the Oculus Quest coming out, I think that's when it's going to start coming into people's homes more and more, when you don't need to put a phone in, or you don't need to hook it up to a PC. You can just plug in, like you don't plug in and play, you just put the headset on and play, just as long as it's charged. and that's all going to become better and more kind of cooperative, and multiplayer is going to be definitely a big thing. So one of the Quest features is kind of, apparently, so it's unconfirmed yet, but basically straight out of the box is multiplayer functions where they talk to each other and they're aware of each other, the two headsets. So you can do co-op games really easily and both embody the same space at the same time and play games together. Someone once said in the Catapult, and it's kind of stuck with me, that all our technological advancements are a different way of ways to create new ways to right, let me start that again. All technological advancements are new ways to connect with other people. So VR is just another way to connect with other people. Being able to, it's not just Skyping your friend on the other side of the world, it's being in the same room with them and hearing their voice and hopefully then seeing their face, like attached to an avatar as this technology progresses. And then you add layers of kind of what you can do with film and technology and all that sort of stuff together, and it really kind of, it should be this kind of industry shifting technology, and I think we're just starting to see the start of it now. How does that?
You did say something about you can use it at home.
Yeah.
Can that be used for educational purposes as well?
Yeah, definitely. So for example, when iPads first became a thing, like kids were doing educational games on iPads, and we can dress education up as games, like, and that's not new, but being able to then stick them in a piece of content with a headset on, and it becomes a learning experience that isn't just about sitting in the classroom. It's about sitting across from the desk with David Attenborough in your own home, and it's about going on an adventure for smaller children, and you've got to solve puzzles and count numbers and that sort of thing, and we can dress it up and they can get involved, and the great thing is they're running around and actually like up on their feet as well when you start to kind of introduce kind of room scale technology as well, that they can get up and it becomes an active experience. So they're not just education stops being sitting at a desk listening to a teacher. It becomes an actual something that you participate in, and it becomes an active experience, because getting up and actually getting active is just going to engage kids more and actually make them feel like they're not just being forced to sit and listen to something or sit and watch something. And bringing stuff into the home will make them, if it's engaging and fun, they will want to do it at home. They will want to spend time doing their homework if it's shooting things in VR and with an educational slant, of course. But if it becomes this kind of experience where you're engaged with it, then it doesn't matter that it's educational, it's fun, and it will really kind of open up this kind of fun and play is something really, really important. Getting people to actually like play is a real benefit of VR, and kind of getting people back to their like childish roots, because they're some of the most memorable experiences.